Okay, now coming to pie charts. Pie charts are a very popular sort of chart, a very common, very popular kind of a chart. Pie charts are so popular not because they are very meaningful or not because they are very useful, but mainly popular because they are very nice to look at. They're very aesthetic to look at. Okay, of course, they give you a lot of information also, but there are certain disadvantages of pie charts as well. But generally, pie charts are popular because of their aesthetics. So pie charts are nothing but a circular depiction of your data. The area of the pie 360 degrees is taken as 100%. So what every segment shows is contribution to the total. Okay, contribution to the total. So the first thing is pie chart will only or should only be used when total and the contribution of segment to total is something that makes sense in the data. Okay, if total and contribution to total does not make sense, then pie chart is not the chart that you want to use. Okay, now it's very popular in business. So you would find a lot of business presentations tend to have pie. They are full of pie charts. So which is the reason why a lot of corporate documentation, newspapers, they always tend to have pie. The problem is it's very difficult to compare angles, right? So I'll show you again. So where it becomes difficult to compare angles. Okay, coming back here, let's pick up some data. Okay, so now let's assume this is weekly sale. This is weekly sale. The shop is closed on Sunday, right? The shop is closed on Sunday, day and sale. Okay. Now, this kind of a data is suitable for a pie chart. Why? Because the total here is total weekly sales equal to sum of all of these. Okay. Now, what is my pie going to be? My pie is going to be 360 degrees equals to 368 units, which is 100%, right? Now, how do I get all of these individual values? All of the individual values will be nothing but this. Okay, now you know the array formula also, so you can do this. Okay, so these are my individual angles. So one slice will be 12 degrees, another slice will be 26, third slice will be 9, and so on. So let's just do that. Insert, go to pie, go to a 2D pie, right? So here, by default, it is giving you blue. The same series. Series will always continue like this. It will go clockwise. So first Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now here, the problem is one of comparing angles. One of comparing angles. Also, the problem is to know the legends. So first of all, let me go ahead and add the legends, right? Add data labels, right? What kind of data labels do I want to add? I want to add the series name to it, or sorry, I want to add the category name to it, and I don't want the values. Okay, where do I want? Here in Pi, it makes sense to have them outside. Makes sense to have them outside. So I have them outside. Now, if I have all of these labeled here, then there is no need to have the legend. So I'm going to remove the legend. Okay. Now, this is an accurate representation of how my sales have been through the week. What are the problems here? Can you at a glance tell me that did my store sell more on Tuesday or more on Friday? Did my store sell more on Tuesday or more on Friday? You can't. Actually, in this case, both of them are equal, but otherwise also it's hard. Look at Monday and Thursday, right? So we are not very good at comparing angles. We are not good at comparing angles. The human brain cannot compare angles so well. So that really is the problem of a pie chart. So how can you circumvent it? Of course, you can circumvent it by giving the percentages or giving the actual values. Okay, you can put the actual values in a new line, right? You can do all of these kind of things. You can do all of these kind of things, right? But you slowly start to lose the cleanliness of the pie. So if I want to also increase and make a percentage there, okay, now my chart is meaningful, but slowly it is no longer as sleek as it could have been. It is no longer a very sleek kind of chart. Sometimes, especially if you've got many of the small segments, right? Sometimes it is a good idea to, first of all, just have a slightly expanded pie, right? So this is called an exploded pie. So you can decide, you can choose how far you want the pie to be exploded. Select the chart, right? Go to format data series, you will get pie explosion. Pie explosion will give you how much. You can enter a value from anywhere from 0, you can have all the way up to 400%. So a pie can be expanded up to 400%. Makes no sense, but yeah, possible. It's allowed. You can do this. Okay, so 0, no, not exploded at all. Now by default, your first slice will start at 0 degrees. Okay, and then from there it will go on in a clockwise fashion. But suppose sometimes you may have data where if the first slice is very small, suppose this, okay, first slice is very small, then it does not look nice if your first slice is very small. Okay, if your pie is like this, then you want to rotate the first slice slightly, okay, so that a bigger bar or a bigger slice comes at the top. Okay, a bigger one comes at the top. So you can do something like this, right? And you say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This looks better visually, but here the problem is because this data is chronological, so it looks odd to have Saturday first. So here this becomes a second problem. So, but otherwise, if this was not a chronological data, then this would have been acceptable. So if you look at it, this chart, look at this chart, looks far better than a chart like this. If you just forget the chronological part for a little while, this chart does not look as nice, right? So starting with a larger segment at the top looks a lot better. Okay, so this is what this kind of a pie chart should be like. Okay, now you can have different types of pie charts, right? Pie chart, can you, okay, now let me ask you one question. Can you tell me, anyone, can you tell me that you know what is the biggest disadvantage of a pie chart? Can anyone tell me what is the biggest disadvantage of a pie chart? Anyone? Readability, okay. What else? Cannot show segments. Too much data can't be represented, okay. And in between someone says attendance, please. I'll just close chat, you know. Okay, can we just get back to understanding the differences? Okay, the biggest of problems, just think about it. What is the biggest of problems? So I think Vastavikta has got the answer right. We cannot compare two segments, right? So pi can only have one single segment, and if you were to have another segment, you will have to draw a second pi. You will have to draw. Yes, that's right. So you can only compare a single data set. So this problem is slightly circumvented by having a donut chart. Okay, this problem is slightly circumvented by having a donut chart where you can have two donuts which are sort of representing two different data sets, but two data series. But the problem is, once again, it becomes very, very confusing. Okay, so donut chart, I'll just show you donut chart. You select the same thing, go to the same place, right? And you have a donut chart. So you see, donut looks really difficult to understand. It's the same thing. It works the same way, but it's slightly difficult to understand, right? But if you were to have another data series, then donut is going to let you do that. So if I say, let me just add another series. Um, okay. So here they are all formatted as percentage, but that's okay. Time being. Right. Now, if I were to have my donut chart expand to have both of them. Now, how do I do that? How do I expand? So I come here, I'm showing it for this chart, but it is available for all the charts. There is a select data available over here, right? Select data available. Now, what really do I want to enter? I'm trying to enter another legend, another entry on this side. So what are the various things that I can do? I can select the entire data set over here, right? Or I can directly add another set over here, okay, from the legend entry. So I do this. Now you see, this is the closest that you can do when it comes to having a pie, okay, representing two different data series. You can't do it with a pie. It's not possible. That's the reason why donut chart was invented, and donut chart will allow you to do this in a slightly possible way. Okay, but again, here there are problems. There are problems. If your values are very different from one another, if your values are very different from one another, then the problem is that that one series will move away from the corresponding series on the other segment, okay, or rather one segment will move away from the corresponding segment on the other series, okay. So because of which your colors will be same, but you will not be able to compare them. So here what I mean is, the two of the yellows, they are close enough, they are close enough. So which one is yellow here? Yellow is Wednesday. So here, if I had, like, say, right, and if I have, yeah, so if you have a data like this, now you see the yellows have moved too far. They are both showing Wednesday still in the two data series, but because they have moved away so far, it becomes very difficult to compare, right? Can you compare this yellow to this yellow? Looks difficult, right? It's still possible here because one is smaller and one is bigger, but it just has made that a lot more cumbersome to see and cumbersome to read. Okay, so it's possible, but it is not. Uh, it's not suggested. It's not a great thing. Okay. So you've got your attendance link. So I'll just pause for a moment. Some people who I see are still asking for attendance link. Attendance link is available. Okay, so any questions with data visualizations? I just want to give you a couple of good practice tips, right? So if you're trying to have multiple types of charts, right? So if you have, say for example this one, okay, if I'm using the same zones, east, west, north and south, okay, if I'm going to use these same zones for multiple things across all my across my entire report, then it's a good idea to keep your color scheme consistent, right? Do not, you can obviously use a different chart to represent a different data, but as long as your data is talking about east zone, west zone, north zone and south zone, it's just a good idea, it's a good practice to keep your color scheme consistent, right? Again, this is not to say that your color scheme has to be consistent, but it's a good idea to do it. We don't mind that so much in our country, but in the west, other readers, they are often frequently very particular about this, because even I've seen people, I've had clients in from America who positively get confused when they see a different color scheme, because they will be like, why did you change the color? And they are looking more for meaning for it. Whereas for us, we tend to often think, oh, we changed the color because I made another chart and it randomly gave me a new set of colors, right? So don't do that. So be very careful, be very particular about having consistency in color scheme. And of course, the other thing that I cannot stress enough is that you have to make sure, you have to absolutely make sure that your chart is suiting the data. Your chart is suiting the data that you have. All right. So we've covered almost all of the top types. And yet, if you have specific data types and specific types of data that you are not able to understand what chart would suit, please feel free to let me know in the group, and I'll be very happy to guide you and help you choose the right kind of chart for it. Okay, because of course, we can only discuss to an extent, but I'll be happy to work with you to find the right chart. Okay. So any questions about this? And then quickly we'll move on to VLOOKUP and stuff like that. Any questions very quickly about charts? 3D pie with section exploded, it's the same way. You can do it the same way. You can just explode the sections and do as we had shown. There is another type which is possible. There's another type which is possible, which is a pie with a bar. Okay, so you select a pie, right? And you've got pie with another pie and pie with a bar. So these are also possible. So here, once you do this, you will have to just say what is the source of the second bar. Okay, so the second bar. So here, the values in the second are 2, and you split the series only by position. Okay, so Monday, you've taken the entire thing, and then that also you have just split by the position. So this is also something that you can do if you want to, but not very common, not used very frequently. But depending on how your data is, you might want to use something of that sort. Okay, what are the questions? Comparison between two sets of scores, like pre-test and post-test kind of data. So again, it depends on what you want to do. You can do this very well with clustered column chart. You can do this with clustered column easily, where you have two sets, right? So you say one is pre and the other is post, and you are using both of them to in a clustered column. That's possible. So you say one of the, these kind of things, right? Or you do one of these kind of things. That's possible. Clustered column or clustered bar. Okay. Otherwise, depending on your kind of data, depending on what you exactly need, so we have to take a look at what exactly your paper is or what exactly your requirement is, and then I can suggest more charts. Okay. Can we use different kinds of charts in one document? Absolutely. By all means, yes. Right. So you have to, it does not matter how many kinds of charts that you are using. What matters is that it has to be suitable to the data that you have, and it also has to be aesthetic for what you are trying to achieve. Okay, when do we use pivot chart? Pivot charts are used in conjunction with pivot tables. Okay, so the only good thing about pivot chart is that it's a dynamic chart, because once you are sure that once you're not sure that you will still have different views, right? And for every view on the pivot table, we did pivot table the other day. For every view on the pivot table, if you want to see a corresponding chart of bar, okay. The problem with having a regular bar chart is that you can do that absolutely, right? You can select this as a pivot range and have a regular bar chart. But suppose one of the views will have a longer range like this, okay? But your bar will not dynamically expand and contract. Or if you set the bar for a longer range and one of them is small, then your bar will show a lot of empty spaces. Does not look nice. Okay, so your pivot chart you will use in these kind of cases, then it will dynamically adjust along with your pivot table. But pivot chart I'm not covering separately, only because it is the same thing, same kind of chart used with the pivot table. Since I've shown you pivot table separately, and since I've shown you the bar charts separately, you can just put both of those things together and practice pivot table and pivot chart, and let me know if you have any trouble. There's a question from Shubhadeep asking, I put some values in bar chart, but it only shows at a range of max to min value bar. How to get bar from zero value? By default, your values should start from zero, okay? But if your value is not starting at zero from some level reason, then just select your axis, and then you can go to your axis options, okay? And then you will have axis bounds. So here it will say minimum is 0, maximum is 120. Then if your axis is not automatically showing minimum as 0, manually you can make it as 0. Okay, right now it is at auto and it is showing 0. But if I want my axis to start at 30, that's possible. Right, that's possible. So my axis is starting at 30. For some reason, if your axis is automatically starting at 30, then you can just manually set it at 0. You can also say over here what your minor units and major units will be. Major units and minor units are what gives you these little gray lines at the back, the grid lines. Okay, so if I have major unit at 50, then I will only get 1 or 2 grid lines, right? So it's 0, 50, 100, 150, right? So depending on what you've set your major and minor, you will get those grid lines. You can also delete those grid lines. So you select only the grid line and you get major grid line option. Just hit the delete key and it goes. The problem with deleting the grid lines is, while it looks very clean, but it makes it very difficult to read. Okay, so if you are ever going to remove grid lines, make sure, absolutely make sure that you have data labels added. That's very, very, very critical, because if you do not have data labels and if you do not have grid lines, then you cannot read that chart at all. Also, in general, in a chart like this chart, some people sometimes will mistakenly assume that there is nothing on Monday since it's so small. Since it's so small, you will think that there is absolutely nothing on Monday at all. So make sure you have the secondary axis. Also make sure you have the values mentioned for that as well, right? Mention the values for that as well. It's a little tricky to select with the mouse, so make sure you select using chart objects. Okay, so any other questions? Can we paste data inside the chart? Typically, no. Right? Typically, no. Wouldn't be able to paste data inside the chart. But it depends, right? It depends what you mean. Suppose you're just trying to paste text inside the chart like a label, then yes, you can. Yeah. But you can't really paste another chart inside a chart. You can do that. Once you have formatted both charts as a picture. Okay. Once you formatted both charts as picture. Say, for example, this is one chart that I come here and I've pasted as picture. And now for some reason, I want this chart also to appear there, right? Let's assume you want this chart also to appear there. So this is possible. I can do this, right? But I can't have data pasted inside the chart. That's not possible at all. How to paste like a label? So you can, okay, so you can't paste label directly, but what you can do is you can first select the labels, right? Sorry, I got fooled because that's the image. So you can select the labels, okay, and get your cursor down to one particular level, and over there you can paste whatever you want to paste. You can paste over there. So here, of course, that thing got changed, but you can, so here I ended up pasting the data, but you can do that to a label. There's a question asking, can you have one label inside and one label outside? You can, you will have to do that manually. Like for example, this particular label, you can pull that and bring that inside. Okay, if that's what suits your requirement, sometimes we do have that. Sometimes suppose it's too small and the label cannot fit inside, right? Then that label alone can be outside, rest of them can be inside. So that sort of thing. But remember, when you do this, you will have to again keep readability in mind. Okay, so this is also possible. You can have one label in a different color. Okay, you can have one label in a different color. How are you opening the side command? So this one will just open. So anytime you go to any of these things, right? So you right click format data series, that will open over there on the side. You just double click something, format chart area, that will open on the side. It will open on the side in the newer versions, but in an older version, it will just open as a dialog box. In your thing, if it doesn't open as a side thing, don't worry about it. Okay, don't worry if it does not come as a site. Okay, so here I just want to also mention one more thing. So here, since you have two of them, right? So let's just expand these a little bit. Okay, now here you see there is a gap between the two of them. Okay, there's a gap between the two of them. So that you can modify with series overlap. Okay, you can modify that with series overlap, and you can say how much you want the gap to be. So the series overlap is 0. That means both series do not overlap at all, right? So the two series will touch each other. Okay, if you have a positive series overlap, one will hide behind another. Typically, you do not want something like this. Okay, if you have a negative series overlap, then that means there's a lot of gap between the two. Again, you don't want something like this. If at all you have to have, then you have like a small negative value, 5% series overlap, okay, or maybe 10% series overlap, right? And you have less gap width equal to say 100%. Right? This looks okay. Looks nice. Okay, clear? So again, in this kind of a chart, if you have data labels on one series, you have to have data labels on the other series as well, right? Suppose in the original way, the way it was very, very small. So if it's very small, then you might want to plot this on another series, another axis. So you say plot this one on a secondary axis. Now, when you plot this on a secondary axis, now what happens is both of them are bars. So the first one on the axis on the left side, there is one bar, and this one is axis on the right side, there is another bar. And because they are both appearing at the same place, they are hiding each other. The orange bar is hiding each other. So if you have to have this kind of a thing, then you'll have to change this one, and you'll have to make the second one into a line chart or some other type of chart, right? So now you can have this combination chart. So you can do this, or you can just directly select the second one, change type to line. That's also possible. Okay, this is change both of them, but you can do with a combo chart and select one of them as a line if you want to. Okay, right? So here it will tell you one is a column and the other is a line. So the line can go on to secondary axis. So if you do this kind of a thing, then again you have trouble with the data labels, right? Because when the label is like 15, 96, then you do not know whether that's a label of the line or label of the bar, right? So when you have something of this sort, then you want to have the labels completely separate so that there is absolutely no confusion. Now the labels very clearly tell you that they are labels of the bar, right? Are you able to follow? So now if you want to have labels for this one, they will be very clearly labels of the line, and the other one will be labels of the bar. So you'll have to just use your you know, visual skills, your analysis, to sort of just see what works in every situation. There is no one single situation that we can say that okay, this is something that's going to work for all of them. So we can only talk about the generalized tools and techniques, and then from there you'll have to go ahead and use your just get a feel of what it is, right? Okay, a couple of questions that I want to also answer from the group. There was one question that came from someone asking, can you find if there is blank somewhere? Suppose this is a long data set and there is one blank value, right? So how do you know that there is one blank value? So I tend to use a very unscientific technique. I just tend to run over the data like this. Okay. And so wherever it stops, after that, I just check if there is something else with it, right? If I just do that, then that works for me. Okay. Now, you may not want to do this kind of a thing. Suppose you have a different data, right? Like this. Okay. So now this is a little cumbersome because now you'll have to first run this way. Okay. This is fine. Then you come back, next column this way. Okay, there's a blank, right? And so and so. You'll have to keep on doing it for many columns. So it's a little cumbersome. So here, there are easier ways that you can do. So you can say there's a function called count blank. Okay, and you can give it a range and specify the entire range. So here it tells me between these two columns, I have selected column E and column F. Between these two columns, there is one blank cell. Okay, between these two columns, there is one blank cell. Suppose I do this for all columns. So I say equal to count blank for all of them. Okay, have this here and just drag it along. Right. So now it will tell me which column has a blank. So here I know count blank is 0. That means this column has no blank. Here I know count blank is showing 1. That means this column has blank. And then from there, I can go ahead and use a variety of other things like conditional formatting, etc. Conditional formatting I'll do in one of the later sessions when we are finally preparing the data for presentation. So right now, we are still in a stage of learning where we are analyzing the data for our own use, right? We are still trying to figure out how to analyze the data. Once, just like how we had done for Word, once we are sure that we like what we see, like what we have created of the data, then we are going to wrap up all the loose ends and we are going to work on the aesthetics of it, formatting. That's when we will do conditional formatting. Okay. Yes, you can. That's a there's one observation from Aparajita. Yes, you can use the filter option to identify blanks. Absolutely. Is it possible to move the data from one place to another without cut and paste? No, you cannot move the data without cut and paste. However, you can do this. You can do this. Okay, and so what you've done here is you created a copy of the data on another column. Okay. Now you can do the same thing for the next one also. Right. You can just select the next one also and create something like this. Right. And now, but the problem is here, if you delete this one, the first one also becomes zero. So how do you circumvent that problem? You circumvent that by pasting first as values. Now, for all you care, you can just go ahead and move all of these. Okay, you can just move all of these away.